All right, so like an idiot, I put the Kelly controller on the LR small block and we had a false positive combination, and I knew it was wrong, but I still let my daughter ride the bike, and after 3 days the motor got so hot that the motor smoked. So now we fried the windings, so we're out a $350 motor, and she has no bike to ride right now. She broke the death veloci. She jumped it off of a curb. She completely blew out the rear shock, and the motor completely broke on that one too. So both of these bikes are completely dead, and she's got nothing to ride. So I'm gonna pull my bikes out of the way here, and I'm gonna get her eBay dirt bike that we bought, her first dirt bike ever. It's down in my basement. We're gonna pull it out and we're gonna try to change the rear tire. So it has like a 1980s vintage Pirelli on it, and I bought some new tires. These are 17-inch on-off-road tires. So I'm gonna try to pull her rear hub motor off the eBay dirt bike, and I'm gonna put one of those tires in its place. So hopefully we can get a bike for her to ride, because right now she has nothing. She just keeps breaking them all. This one was my fault though. I mean, she didn't break it, I wired it wrong, and then she just overheated the motor. It's not really her fault. All right, here's the electric bike graveyard. These are all my old projects. We got the Razor scooter, we have the Veloci prototype frame, we got the Vector light frame, we got the eBay dirt bike, we have the 48-volt Veloci, we have the OneBot S6, and then we have the prototype Veloci. So there we are. Let's take the eBay dirt bike out. All right, I got my work area set up. I got some insulation on the ground so it doesn't hurt so bad when I'm down there working. I got my tools, I got a little bench seat, and I got to take the side cover off here and disconnect the wires going to the motor, and then I can pull the motor off the bike and start swapping out the tire. All right, so I also threw the battery on the cycle satiator because it was dead, man. So this battery has some sort of protective BMS in it. When it hits a really low voltage, it just completely dies and puts out nothing. So I had to do a forced start, and it was at like 50 volts, and now it's up to 65 after only about 30 seconds. So this battery's been through hell, but it's been a really good battery. I think it's a 72 volt, I think 18 amp hour, made out of 18 650s. So it's been down there in the basement for about 6 months not being used, and hopefully we can revive it and bring it back to life. All right, we got the side cover off the bike. Now I need to disconnect all the wiring, the phases, and the hall sensors, and then pull this out so we can pull the rear rim off. All right, it is now unwired. I cut the zip ties and I loosened up the cable going to the hub motor. We got the wheel pulled off, and I have a little kid's chair propped up over there holding the thing off the ground. And now I got to dive into this old tire. This is a really, really hard, old, like 1980s Pirelli off-road vintage tire. I'm probably gonna have to cut it off the rim. It's such a pain. It's not flexible at all. The easiest way is to probably just sawzall it right off. Yep, it looks like I'm gonna cut it. I already started messing up the rim trying to take it off, so I'm just gonna hack at it with the sawzall, and hopefully we can get it off that way. So I usually just make 2 cuts into it, one straight down and then one at like a 45-degree angle, so you can expose the bead. And then once you expose the bead, you can usually like clip it with some dikes. So I'm gonna grab some diagonal cutters and see if I can snip this thing off. All right, I got some Klein diagonal cutters. Hopefully this will be strong enough to clip away at the bead. You know, the rim is aluminum and it's very, very easy to ruin it. And when the beads are so hard to get over there, over the wall of the rim, you really destroy the rim. That side's clipped. That was nice. That went really easy. Let's see if we can get this side as easy. There we go. That was actually way easier than I thought it was going to be. Oh, just like that. We just cut the tire in half. All right, let's throw that junk Pirelli out of the way. So I'm going to clean this rim up. Probably put some more rim tape in it, even though it looks good. It's got some Gorilla tape in there. I just want to make sure the spokes aren't going to poke through. I'm going to file off any of these burrs that I've made from the screwdrivers, and then we'll go from there. Oh my God, look at this, I'm ruining my shorts. All right, I'm just lightly deburring the rim where I made screwdriver marks, because we don't want to pop the new tube. So I'm just feeling over it with my finger, and any spot that's sharp or rough, I'm just filing it down. So it's nice and silky smooth. And you know, who cares if the paint's gonna look a little ugly, because this bike is ugly in general. It's been through hell. She's probably put 1,500 miles on it, so she went across the country on this thing. Just give it a good cleaning. I like to use these Dottie Tough towels. I get them at my work. They're like 15 bucks for a jar of 100, and they're very abrasive and have a good cleaning solvent on them. Just clean the inside first, and then I'll clean the outside with whatever's left of the towel. Most of the fluid's gonna get used cleaning up the inside of the rim here. Get a nice clean surface to work with. And you also wanna make sure you use some sort of lubricant when you're putting your new tire on, because dot rated tires, moped tires, motorcycle tires, they're such a tight fit to the rim that if you try to just put it on really quick and half-ass without proper lubrication or taking the right steps, you easily ruin it. You'll ruin the rim, or you'll ruin the tire, or you'll puncture the tube. So a lot of people like to put the tire on first, halfway, and then put the tube on. For some reason, I have better results when I put the tire and the tube on together. But when you do that, you have a chance to puncture the tube when you're seating the tire onto the bead. So here's the new tire. It's just a Chinese generic tire, 2.5-17. It's got a really nice aggressive tread on it. And here's our tube. They came with the tires. It was a set, 2 and 2, 17 by 2.5. I like to get a little bit of air in the tube just so it's not so flat, make it a little round. Not a lot. Right about there. All right, so now I'm gonna get the tube put inside the tire, and you'll notice that the tube is slightly smaller diameter, which is problematic when you're trying to install it, because the tube will try to stick out of the bead, and then when you're installing the tire onto the rim, you'll puncture the tube. But like I said, we're still gonna try to go this route and install it as one piece, because these tires are so small. Once you put on half of it on this really wide rim, this is like a 2.5-inch rim, once you get it installed halfway, you can't even get the valve stem into the rim. So I'm gonna try to do it as one piece. So you're gonna wanna get the valve stem straightened out and seated in place, and get the bead started on the lower half of the tire. Make sure the tube is not being pierced, and then get the valve stem nice and straight. You don't want it to be crooked like it was the last time it spun inside itself. And then we're gonna thread on the valve stem nut loosely, just so it doesn't fall back in. So before you start installing your tire, you wanna make sure the bottom bead is seated all the way onto the small inner part of the rim. It gives you more diameter to get up and over this huge wall of the rim. Because if you don't make sure it's seated, it's gonna be even harder to get it in place. Now I have the tire halfway on the rim. It's starting to get really difficult. So I just got some 2x6s that I have kicking around, some spare lumber, and I put it on each side of the wheel, holding the rim off the ground, so the hub motor axle isn't digging into the ground. Now this is gonna give me some more leverage. I can use my knees, and I can lube this thing up and hopefully get it on. I'm using an adjustable wrench here. The back of it is a tire iron, and I'm just kind of leaving it in one side over here so the tire doesn't slip out on the side that I'm not putting pressure on. Keep working it, small movements at a time, trying to get some lubrication on this thing. I think it's just like a simple green degreaser. Probably not the best thing to use, but it's what I got, so I'm using it. So now I'm gonna try to get my knees in on it. I'm gonna use my knee to hold that wrench. I'm gonna start leveraging the other side. I'm already dripping sweat. So now I'm going to use this other adjustable wrench that's already bent from using it as a tire iron. and we're gonna try to get it over the hard part.
And you just want to get the back half in first. So you need to get the tube out of the way of the rim. You don't puncture the tube. Now we're going to try to leverage on the back part of the tire right now. Not the front half that you can see, but we're trying to get the back bead on. And then once you get the one half on, the other side kind of just pushes into place a lot easier. You just need to always make sure that you're not applying pressure to the tube itself, because you will puncture the tube very easily. It's going, but it's going very slowly. Alright. Now this is the really hard part where it just doesn't want to move anywhere. We're on the final home stretch. Once you finally get it over that hump, it gets easier. Alright, I'm running out of wrenches. So I'm to the point now where I kind of need another tire iron. And I don't have it. But you know, sometimes you just got to work with the tools that you have and wish for the best. I'm going to turn this a little bit so we have our leverage straight at us. And we need to get this really thick part over the hump here. So I'm going to keep pressure on this side with my knee. Work this side on. There we go. We're getting there, folks. But when you're doing this, there comes a time where you just kind of need more hands. And that's why I like to put the rim on the ground like this so you can use your knees. But this is a grueling process. I'm dripping sweat and probably end up bleeding a little bit. But that's what it takes to put on a tire. So I try not to use flathead screwdrivers, but I think I need to resort to one right now. Well, I really can't find anything else, so I'm gonna try a railroad tie. I'm gonna get some gloves. I'm gonna ruin my Fox riding gloves because I don't have any work gloves right now, but I need to get some more leverage on these wrenches and they're really hurting my hands. So this is what we're doing. Sometimes you gotta improvise. So we're on the final stretch here. This is the very vital part where you wanna make sure you do not puncture your tube, because your tube is slightly smaller diameter, and on this last stretch, this is when you'll do it. Just take your time with it. Make sure you have plenty of lube on there. You can wash this all off later, it's not a big deal. So you need to get the tire iron over the back half of the rim, but you don't want to stick it through too much because then the tire can't fall into place. There's a very fine line between hanging over the rim edge and giving the bead enough room to slip over the rim. So I'm gonna do what you're never supposed to do, guys. I'm gonna take a flathead screwdriver and put some electrical tape around it so we try not to puncture anything, because it's the only thing I can get into place. And just like that, boom, it's on. We did it, guys. The back bead is in place. We're gonna lube it up one more time. Call that the last hurrah. And now the rest of this bead we might be able to just put on by applying pressure on each side evenly and rolling it in place. Yep, boom. All right, there you have it, guys. That is not easy, man. I just dirtied my shorts, ruined my Fox riding gloves, bent an adjustable wrench, but we did it. We got a new tire mounted on this thing. I think 36 is good for now. We're gonna make sure we have one washer on the inside of the frame and one washer on the outside of the frame. And we're also gonna make sure that our wiring for the hub comes out the bottom. So in case rain ever comes down, it doesn't run down the cable and fill inside of the hub motor with water. So I decided not to take off my disc brake, so it's harder to get into place. So we need to make sure that the disc falls into place, and now we can get it on there. There we go. We'll just tighten it up snug, then double check that it's lined up center of the shock again, and then you can tighten it up the full way. There we go. Everything looks good. Wires coming out the bottom. It's centered on the rear shock. Now I can do a final tightening of the nuts. There we go. And a final tightening on the phase side. There we go. Perfect. Now we can get this thing wired up. Now I just need to route the cabling back up into the battery housing, wire it all back together with the hulls and the phases, and then we should be able to see if this thing works. We are in place. Now I just need to zip tie the wiring on the bottom here before I finalize it, because I need to know how much wire length I have inside the battery housing. Now I can cut these zip ties. All right, I have all of my hall sensors stripped and twisted together. Now I'm just going to heat up my M12 soldering iron right here, and we are going to solder them down. The soldering iron heats up pretty quick. Look at that, it's already hot. It took about 10 seconds. So let's solder these down. Now we can connect the blue phase, the last one. Just make sure it's seated all the way into the connector, and tighten it down with the flathead screwdriver. Yep, the wheel spins. So I have all of these bolts that I took off of the battery cover in a certain order because they're all different lengths. And I want to make sure I put them back in the same hole they came out of. But also the rear shock on this bike is actually a shock off of a 300EX four-wheeler. And it is one of the front shocks. So it has no sort of rebound or compression. It's just kind of like set to what it is because it's not meant to be smart. It's just a stupid shock. And my daughter's getting pretty big, so I think I want to try to put a stiffer shock on here, but I'm not sure what I have. So it looks like we're going to have to sacrifice the shock off of the LR small block. There we go, we got it. All right, we got that shock out. Now I gotta lower the bike on itself. All right, we got a low rider, boys. That thing is sweet. Yep, 12 and 14 on this one. Inch-and-a-quarter extension and a hammer. Beautiful. So yeah, it's definitely quite a bit shorter. I had to say maybe an inch, a whole inch shorter. But I still think this shock's going to be better overall because it's much stiffer. So I'm going to slip this washer in here, take the play out of it. There we go. Beautiful. That's a lot shorter. That's not cool. It's too short. That's crazy short. But that's all she's going to have for now. There's not much we can do. But it's stiff, so that makes up for it. We'll now call it the eBay clown bike instead of the eBay dirt bike. All right guys, there you have it. I took off the hub motor, I reinstalled a new tire and tube, and I got the thing charging up after it's been sitting for 6 months. It's going to need another couple of hours on that. And then I also switched out the shock. This is the shock off of the Tao DB17. So it's a dirt bike shock with tons of compression and stiffness. We took off the cheap 300EX shock. That was kind of like a pogo stick shock, but the bike is now riding lower. You can noticeably tell the seat height is lower. It's about, I think it's a 20mm difference in that shock height, but it's so much stiffer that it's going to help, and the pogo stick thing was kind of dangerous. So let's let this thing charge for a little longer, and then we can get out on a ride and see how this thing does.